All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 6 p.m., and it's time to have the audience with the auditor. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of this event. One of the things that I was very adamant about, of course, when running for this office was town hall meetings. And being able to have FaceTime, one-on-one, with your elected official and hopefully one of our special guests is very, very important to me. And I think it's very important to our community. I'd like to thank the Public Library for allowing us to have our event here. We really do appreciate their work in setting everything up and videotaping it, and that way we can get it online and available for those who were unable to make it. So as an introductory point, I always like to start off with something that kind of gets you thinking a little bit, and this time it's a phrase. Some of you may have seen this before, but some of you may not have. Now, I want to know who saw this. I am nowhere. And when it comes to county finance, sometimes that's how we feel, isn't it, Mr. Chairman? Who saw this? Colton's like, there it is. I'm here. The idea behind that is that our mind sees one immediately. And that's kind of the tact we're going to take as we start to talk about the county finances is, are we kind of spending in circles, or are we at a point in which we can really start to pivot and go in a different direction? And I believe the latter is more true today than it was in times gone by. So let me introduce myself. I am Jake Lee, your county auditor. I grew up in the village of Hopkins Park in Kankakee County. I've always lived in the community here, except for the time when I was in the United States Navy. I was educated through Lorenzo Smith and St. Anne High School. And, of course, after high school, went off to serve our country at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. And from there, I went to the USS Enterprise in Norfolk, Virginia, the first nuclear aircraft carrier, not nuclear, as some people like to say, the first nuclear aircraft carrier. Yeah, and then, of course, in the Navy, I often joke that when I joined the Navy, I wanted to see the world. And they give you a wish list of places that you'd like to go. And, of course, I didn't know that if you say where you really want to go, they'll send you to the opposite of where you say you want to go. And so the first duty station, I said I wanted to go to the West Coast on a ship. They sent me to the East Coast, shore duty. And then I said I wanted to go and serve with the Marine Corps overseas in Okinawa, Japan. They sent me to the USS Enterprise. Oddly enough, I got to go overseas, but I ended up in Afghanistan with the United States Army, the 101st Airborne Division out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. So I never quite got what I wanted during my naval career, but it was nonetheless very rewarding, and it prepared me for a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today. One of the questions I get asked more than any other question, other than, have you figured it out yet? I get asked, what does the auditor do? Why, I have no idea, because when you think of auditing, everyone hangs their head like you're the IRS, and it's like, that's a real conversation killer. What do you do, Jake? I'm the county auditor. Oh, well, sorry I asked, and then you kind of go there. But the auditor, by statute, is a very significant office in our county. And the way that I approach the office is really through something that you've heard all the time, ACT, accountability, collaboration, transparency. I believe that we've got to hold people accountable. I believe we've got to work together to get the job done, and I believe we have to be transparent. And that's how I approach the office, and we'll talk about some of the things we've already accomplished and some of the things we'd like to accomplish. Let me move forward briefly here to just talk about a few of the things that we were able to accomplish. Let me just grab this here. Of course, I clicked out of my my documents here, so let me pull them back up. Okay, so one of the things that people often ask is, what have you been able to do since you've been in? You know, we got you elected, and we want to know what's going on. So early on, as you well know, we got started, and with the collaboration of the county board, the state's attorney's office, we were able to get our credit card policy in place and passed to set the standard. What we're doing is working on our culture, and cultural change takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort. It's not as if all of a sudden we wake up and the culture is different. So we're setting the standard with our culture, creating a culture of accountability. So we did that. Our travel policy, we did that to make sure that people are in compliance and folks are not, claiming mileage on there and then charging the county credit card and different things like that. We're making sure that people are in compliance, and we're saving you, the taxpayers, money when it comes to how we deal with some of those things. Another issue we had that I was very big on is the claims process. You know, the claims process would take months and months and months. So an expense need to be made to allow for a purchase. And in order to get that paperwork through the system, it would take forever. I mean, it would take weeks. And so we streamlined that, and we're now able to get those claims processed much quicker, and we're able to make sure that we know what our accounts payable number is a little more accurately. We're going to talk about that in a minute, because paying the claims is another story. Unfortunately, that's the environment we're in today. Those are the cards we were dealt. But we're going to talk about kind of what our plan is, especially when I bring the chairman up to deal with some of those things. The other thing that we have done is now interfund borrowing. That's another thing. My stomach turns every time I talk about interfund borrowing, because I am vehemently opposed to the idea. However, it's the world we live in today. We have to do it. Otherwise, you don't even want to think about what's next. But we scrutinized the interfund borrowing methodology, and through that process, we realized that there were some funds that were in the interfund borrowing list that should not have been there. And so we've taken steps to correct that. There was a collaborative effort, again, with the leadership in the county, with our state's attorney's office, with our county board, with myself. We have been able to get these kinds of things done and to work to get into compliance. And so we're very excited about the direction we're going as it relates to integrity in our county finances. So, where are we? Well, I'm glad you asked. Few things about the auditor's office. We're a countywide elected position, as you well know. We are part of Article 7 of the United States, or the Illinois Constitution, and we are commissioned by the governor of the state of Illinois, as the other countywide elected officials are. Some of the things we're responsible for is scrutinizing the county expenditures. Every claim needs to be legitimate. Every expense needs to be legitimate, and so we're going to scrutinize that. We'll report on county finances. I'm working on the quarterly reports, where I'll have the quarterly reports available, where we will have some nice charts and graphs to kind of show what the county finances look like. Most of us know because we talk about it all the time, but to put it in a easy to understand, easy to read format, we'll have those available. We closely monitor tax dollars, report on governmental operations, and ensure accountability for all of our assets. So any county-owned equipment, we are responsible for making sure that that equipment is used properly. And of course, we promote and we maintain transparency, which that's the big one for me. And that's what these forums are all about, is the transparency component of our county government. So this one might be a little difficult to see, but this is the general fund activity for the last 6 years. And I thought I had a laser somewhere, but that's okay. So the yellow is the expenses, and the orange or the brick color is revenue. And as you can see, expenses in FY12 exceeded revenue by pretty much a significant amount, and that continued. The projections for FY16 is that we'll be about $25,000 in the black. There are a couple of things going on that may change that number, but it's right now looks as if we're going to be pretty close to what revenues were. So that's encouraging. The next thing we'll talk about is the general fund balance. A lot of people ask, how did we get here? And this is what we often call the money shot, or in our case, the non-money shot. Okay, thank you. So right here in 2009, right there. Anyone remember what happened in 2008? The bubble burst, right? We had nothing against MBAs, because I'm an MBA, but we had a bunch of MBAs who thought that they were smarter than everyone in the world, and they securitized stupidity, and we ended up with a housing market crash, okay? And all economies, all governments everywhere suffered from this, including our own. And that, in addition to the sales tax hit that we took, in addition to an arbitration ruling, all of those things hit us in 1 year, and our general fund went from that to this. And when expenses, and we have to remember the history of the tax situation in the county, and there was a tax cap placed in the 90s, right? And so expenses continued to go up while revenue was flat or went down. And so at this point, these are reserves basically that are being eaten away, and then boom, here's the hit where the general fund went negative, and that's where we needed to take our first TAWs to just stay afloat and to operate. And then 14 and 15, the general fund it just got even worse. Right now, the general fund, as of about 1,500 this afternoon, was about $5.3 million in the negative. So, this is a very real situation that myself and the other newly elected officials and our new chairman are dealing with. This is our reality today. This. In terms of cash in the bank, where the general fund sits, there's $1.49 million in the bank. Payroll alone is about $1.1 million. So this is a real dire situation when it comes to cash and the county finances. And people have to understand how serious it is, and that we are working very hard to try to correct it and to be as transparent as possible while we go about that. This is just a slide to tell you that the state of Illinois, they just gave us an $80,000 payment, but they still owe us over $1 million. So again, what's going on in Springfield affects us. What has happened in the past affects us. A lot of things are making things very difficult. Our AP spending, this is basically to say at the end of the year, the amount in which we owe our vendors has gone down over the last few years, but we're still in a situation where our accounts payable log is $2 million on a regular basis. So it's very difficult from a cash flow perspective to try to manage all of this. But we're doing the best we can. Finally, I want to just give you some websites here to Kankakee or countyco.kankakee.il.us is the county website. A lot of the information we talk about is available on that website. And then, of course, the county auditor's website. We do have some updates to do to this website. But I have started putting up the claims reports. I've changed the claims reports where they're a lot nicer, a lot cleaner. We got some charts and graphs. Many people know I love charts and graphs. So we've got that information available so that you can easily see how we're trending as it relates month to month, year to year, and year to date. We've got that information available for you. So those are some of the things that we're doing in the county auditor's office in order to promote that transparency and that accountability. So what I'd like to do before we open up for questions is invite the chairman, our special guest, Mr. Wheeler, to come up and to kind of dialogue with us as we talk about some of the things that have happened in the county. And, just how the chairman got involved in county government, because I think it's very important for us as citizens to know our elected officials. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being part of our conversation today.
Thanks for having me. I think the crowd's getting hostile out here, so already it's not a good start.
Keep it down in the back there. Well, hey, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask you, what made you decide to get involved in local government? What was the kind of aha moment, as it were?
Oh, I don't know. I question that frequently. No, it's really kind of a two-part story. The first part is that when I was younger, I was told by my grandmother that that's what I was going to do. Her father was county board chairman for 20 years from 39 on and became state rep after that. And on my grandfather's side, his grandfather's grandfather, was a U.S. congressman. So for the only one still from Kankakee. So at that point, they were saying, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go through the process and get involved and do all those things, because we're from Kankakee, 1853. So that's just your destiny. And so what kid says, I want to do that? So I said, heck to the no, and I'm going to do what I want to do. And I don't even think I believe what you guys believe politically. Because, again, what kid wants to do that? They want to go their own way. So it got to the point where I actually got out there and got a job and got more involved in the community. I had a business magazine that I was running for the newspaper, and I started to get more involved with the chambers and things like that because it was at the point where we had kind of bottomed out, worst place to live in the United States, all that stuff. And I said, maybe I can do something. I had kids. I wanted to try to change some things. And so I remember walking in the door at the Central Committee headquarters and said, I live in Riverview. What can I do? And they said, well, there's a county board spot open. I said, okay, let's start there. And so I walked in, and after about 3 months, I realized that I couldn't keep quiet anymore. And however much that dismayed a few people, I had to keep going with that because if you're sensible and you see some of the things that were going on, you just speak your mind because that's what you're there to do, to make sound business decisions for the public. So that's how I got involved, and I didn't ever think I would be there, but I'm glad I am.
And to follow up on that, can you tell us what your initial reaction was or what kind of went through your head when you were actually elected by your peers to be the chairman of Kankakee County?
It was surprising at first, to be honest. I was glad that it happened. It wasn't something that I was like, oh, wow, now what do I do? It was more of the fact that now we get to move forward, but it was definitely a turning point because the same old thing wasn't happening again. It was time for us to turn the corner on a lot of different things that we had been talking about as a group. This wasn't just me. This was a board that was shifting direction. And we saw it as a team that there were some things that we were missing. And it's not to disparage any one person or any one thing that was going on. It was the whole concept of what are you here to do? Who are you here to represent? Are you here to be a nursemaid to the public, or are you here to do what they're asking you to do? So we kind of took that and ran with it in a short, 4 months now. So,
well, I have to commend you for a lot of what you've done. Now, it's no secret that Kankakee County is in dire financial straits. And often I refer to our finances as being hideous, which might be a little unfair, but it kind of is what it is. Now, this didn't just happen, but looking back, are there any observations that you've made since you've been the chairman in terms of opportunities that maybe we missed out on, and some things that, if we could kind of dial back the hands of time, might be considered to do differently, or at least approach differently? Anything like that you can give us?
It's tough because you end up dwelling on the past if you do that, but I can tell you that there was a time, and on one of the previous charts you had, when things started to slip. And I guess the anecdote would be is when I got on the board, I asked a couple of people, I said, what's our plan for when the sales tax revenue goes away? Because if you pay attention, it started out west and it just kept moving east. The states would start changing the rules. So while it was a wonderful program, and I thought it did a lot for the communities around here, Kankakee and the county, it was going to go away at some point. What was the plan? And it was, it's not going to go away. It's fine. The state's not going to rule against us. And we saw where that got us. So it was the inability to react to the situation fast enough. And whether it was, when you look at economics, there's always troughs and valleys and peaks, and it goes over. They didn't know where the bottom was. And people were making decisions saying, it's going to change, but it never did. And so when we were keeping our expenses at a higher level, a $33-4 million budget, and then our revenues, we were losing sales tax at one point, and our income coming from other sources, primarily bed rental. They thought the bottom was going to hit, and it never hit. It just kept going. And so we went from that surplus, which was minimal in around 2012, down to the $4.5, almost $5 million hole we're at in a second. And so there was, if I would say do something different, is to realize that revenue was going to go away at some point, and to have a plan for that. And so I spent a lot of time trying to not have a post-mortem on that, but try to make sure that does not happen again.
Excellent. And so along those lines, as you think about what you're putting together, can you give us like 3 or 2 accomplishments since you've been chairman that you're most proud of, and then 2 or 3 things that you would like to see happen this year and for the rest of your first 2-year term?
Sure. The accomplishments are board accomplishments, first of all. They're not mine, because they just elected me to be the leader of the board. These are votes that our 28 people with a full room have made. So that needs to be realized first. This board has completely changed direction, and that, I would say, is the biggest accomplishment that I am very proud to see happen. The first time it happened was with the budget 2 years ago, when we made motions on the floor to change the budget the way that it was into a budget that would have been much worse and would have put us much further in the red. And we stood up as a group of, I think it was 16 or 17 board members, and made amendments on the floor to the budget that actually took us in a different direction. That's the first day that we were ever a board, and I wasn't chairman yet. So I was proud of that moment, that we took control at that point. Now, when we start doing things like broadcasting the meetings, opening up the process of what we're doing to the public, listening to the public, doing the things that they want us to do, that's a board thing. That's just not me. I'm able to facilitate it, but it's really the board doing those things. That is the most important thing I think we've done so far. The other thing is to start to build these plans for the future. That's also what I'm very proud of. We have an opportunity to go 2 different directions right now, and I'm not here to stump for a sales tax, but if we actually get the sales tax increase for a short amount of time, we're able to basically implement a plan to take us further down the road. That is one opportunity that we have. The other opportunity, if we don't get it, we have to take a different direction. But the simple fact of the matter is that in a year, and especially in 2 years from now, we have to be able to float on our own, to live on our own, without accessing capital from banks, because we are not credit worthy in the terms that they use in the banking industry for us to get a loan. Those surplus numbers you saw on the board, that was what we used to get through the times when we don't get tax revenue. That's gone. We're in the negative. We don't have any cash to access. Every dollar we spend on the county level is borrowed right now. It's frightening to think that. And that's why we float paycheck to paycheck for the county employees. We have to change that. But in order to change that, we had to cut expenses. We have $10 million in 3 years. We've cut $10 million out of the budget in expenses. Unfortunately, the revenue fell faster than that. But in the last 2 years, or in the last year, we cut $2 million out. So we're doing the right things on our spending. People say we have a spending problem. That's absolutely incorrect if you're paying attention. We have a revenue problem now, and we need the public to step up. Now, if they don't, there's another plan, and there is 2 ways to go with this. And I prefer the other plan to where we're able to keep what we have. So that is another thing that we're really focusing on.
So in thinking about the 0.25% that will be on the ballot a week from tonight, or a week from yesterday. No, what is today? Tuesday? Today is Tuesday, a week from tonight. So a week from tonight, it'll be on the ballot. And so my question is, when we look at how deep the hole actually is, we've got a deficit of $6.5 million in all of our funds that are in the bank account where the general fund is. We've got $6.5 million of interfund borrowing. We've got $3 million that we borrow from the banks, which is our cash advance, basically in the TAWs. A $2 million accounts payable. How much does the sales tax actually help, or does it? Or, what do you see in terms of us being able to deal with that huge hole right now?
Well, and I get this question because a sales tax increase, again, 0.25%, 25 cents per $100 spent for only 4 years. Okay, what that allows us to do is to keep the staffing levels we have right now on the patrol side of the sheriff's police. Okay, that's not to go out and hire a bunch of people because we have this huge deficit. Okay, what we're doing is we're trying to actually isolate and be able to devote that revenue to keeping what we have, because we have a budget right now, and I don't know if the public knows this. We passed a budget that did not include any of the new revenues we're seeing from the DHS program. For us, our rent-a-bed program we're doing with DHS ICE. So that was passed before this situation happened where we had new revenue. There's new cost involved with that as well. So what we want to do is we want to use the public's confidence in us to manage this situation properly, to keep staffing where it needs to be, while we use the increase in revenues we're seeing from the DHS ICE program to fill the hole. Okay, that is a plan. That is a business plan. That is a business model. So if we're able to keep what you have right now while we pay down the debt that we have, then we don't have that access to capital problem. And if you look at the numbers, if we get the amount of commitment that we get from DHS down the road here, we could be out of this in about 4 or 5 years. That hole could be filled, and we don't have to borrow from other people. We'll have the money in our reserves. That's why that I think this 4 years may just be enough time to get out of it if everything hits correctly. So we want to make sure that we build this business plan properly. But if we don't have that $2.5 million, which the Department of Revenue thinks is about what it would be as we get from a sales tax per year, if we don't have that, we don't have the money to support that level of commitment. And so we won't have that patrol commitment. We won't have the commitment to hire the prosecutors that we need to back up what the municipalities are delivering on our doorstep as far as violent criminals and things like that. So that's why there's only 2 people that are going to really, or 2 departments that'll benefit. It's the state's attorney's office and the patrol division, and that benefits the whole county, not just the people living in the rural areas.
Speaking of public safety, one of the things that was eye-opening to me is how expensive crime is. And what I mean is those individuals in our community who are in Jerome Combs, for example, what that cost is to our community. Do you think that we as taxpayers really know what crime actually costs, and what can we do about it?
It's funny, well, it's not funny. It's actually sad. some of the root causes of crime are never really addressed, both on the state level, and then we're always chasing our tail as far as throwing bad money after bad money as far as this situation goes. The proactive side, especially what's going on like in the state's attorney's office and some of the other ways to reach out into the community to stop this before it gets there, untreated mental health, things like that. What's one of the first things that gets cut in a state budget? Mental health services. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So when I used to be involved with the local mental health center, the anecdote is, you know, when they cut our funding, that mental health center deals with the inmates out at the jail providing services. So we're not seeing them in the office anymore. We're seeing them at the jail now because they're going untreated, and that's where we're getting to see those clients. It's sad. So the cost is tremendous, not only in terms of the ancillary cost on the drain on society's cost, but also what it costs to house our own prisoners. People don't realize that we have a population of maybe 220 to 240 of local residents in the jail right now. And that's your tax dollars that pay for all of that. You know, room, board, public defender, the county picks up all of that. And the booking fees, and I don't know exactly what they are now, but if they're $20 from a local municipality, well, that's a pretty darn good deal, because then after they arrest and bring them into the jail, all the cost is on the county. So the municipalities need to realize that. That's a big deal. So if we can't do that, where does that cost go? If they have to hold those prisoners over the weekend because we can't afford to keep the jail open for that whole weekend as far as the booking goes, do these municipalities have the cells to hold people and the people and all of that? That's where I'm getting at. These aren't threats. These are realities. These numbers up here on the board, this is not a joke. This is us surviving week to week, or payroll to payroll, excuse me. And so we have to pay bills when we can afford to pay bills, and it's never all of them. So I can't stress enough. We have 220 to 240, sometimes 260 of our own people in the jail right now, and you can address why that is. And by the way, I just mentioned that it's equally split between white and black. Those numbers are readily available. So I want people to realize it's not predatory or anything like that. There's societal reasons our jail is full of our own residents, but we need to use that as a signal that there is a cost here locally beyond 25 cents per $100.
So, Mr. Chairman, other than being able to get current as it relates to, say, the general fund comes to zero. It's exciting, right? What else would
4 or 5 years, by the way. 4 or 5 years. I just want to mention
at least. Yeah. So what else would you say if you could name one or two things that the county can accomplish with your leadership, and of course with the collaboration of all of our electeds and the county board? What does Kankakee County look like in 5 years, say?
We're really at a crossroads. I have to be honest. It's tough to predict. If we have a fund balance that's positive and we're not, borrowing from ourselves and from every other source possible, anything is really possible. We're able to proactively look at what we're doing. We're able to, we're looking at our airport on what can we use the airport for on redevelopment right now. We're reaching out to the federal government on, do we want warehousing, or do we want, well, I'm sure we're not looking at passenger, we're looking at, freight and things like that as a economic engine for this area. But we don't have local match for that. The federal government may require some of that. So 5 years from now, all I want to be able to say is that we dug ourselves out of the hole. We absolutely are doing things the right way. People can trust what we say because we demonstrated we did what we said we were going to do. So beyond that, it took us 40 years to get to this point. So it's not going to turn around. You're not going to see a whole new community in 5 years. But at least you're going to be able to say the people that help dig us out of this, maybe they're the same people that can point us in the right direction going forward. And the other thing I got to say, and this is really the last I want to talk about the public safety tax, because I don't want to harp on it too much, but no company will locate to an area where there is murder and mayhem on the front page of the newspaper every week. They look at that stuff. And so one of the things we have to do is to address that, not only at the root cause, but also we have to make sure on the public safety side of it that we're addressing it as well.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate you taking some time and answering some of our questions and that. We do have some folks in the audience, and I would like to invite you at this time to ask any questions of the chairman or myself. If any of the information wasn't entirely clear, if you want some clarification or what have you, I would definitely love to entertain those at this time as well. So are there any questions from the audience? Someone has to have a question. Don't everyone ask at once. Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned that one of the agencies that we're engaged in for the rent-a-bed at the jail is ICE. And I know they're not a popular agency in some quarters right now, and there has been questions in the debate for the mayor's office about a lot of Hispanic people in the community being really worried about what could happen in our community if federal agents came looking for them. Is there going to be any effect, or are you concerned at all about the fact that the county would be benefiting from having people in the jail that ICE had gotten, and people being afraid for their situations here in town?
While I think it's a reasonable question to ask, I think it's a question for DHS ICE. The county doesn't do sweeps. The county doesn't go in and pull people out of their house. What we are doing is we are housing violent criminals and not families and not people that are grabbed just because they were working as whatever position they were, whether it was a line cook or all the way up to general manager or whatever. That is not what we're in the business of. We're in the business of providing a secure place for criminals at the jail. Now, they're going to be housed somewhere. What we have, and it's no secret, DHS ICE has actually said in the Chicago Tribune, we want to make Kankakee the embarking point for where all people leave that are criminals to other parts of the world. As I have expressed to some of our congresspeople, I am not interested in being perceived as a for-profit prison. What we are is we are a jail with professionals in that jail, okay? They are used to dealing with criminals. So this just isn't like, as I've heard, you guys are just filling it up with Mexicans and sending them back to Mexico. Well, I mean, we have entire, Laotian street gangs. We have Russian mobsters. I'm not going to get into what ICE does, okay? Because that's their comment. But I can tell you that it's not what is perceived in the media right now. So whether you are for the platform of what's going on in Washington or against, those folks are going to be housed somewhere. Right now, we're just having that place, and just for criminals.
Thank you. I have a two-part question. Every other week, what is the county payroll? How much is it paid out? And in the $24 million budget that the county has, how much of it is payroll and people cost?
Right now, it's about $1.1 million roughly per payroll every 2 weeks. March, there was 3. That's debilitating. That's one of the reasons that we actually went to the highway department for a short-term loan, because we had a bunch of expenses that showed up that we didn't know were coming. Christmas in April almost, I guess, is about the way to look at it. So we addressed that. But in any business, you're looking at about 80% of costs or payroll. And that's really about the base. And we're like, government is a business in that aspect. So costs continue to climb, as Jake had mentioned, and our ability to collect to cover those costs is limited by our tax caps. So I think that there's a choke point there. And I think it's probably good to mention this. Property tax seems like a good idea. Everybody wants to cap their property tax. But in a county like ours, that means that we can't capture for new construction and the consumer price index increase. So we're frozen at a certain revenue level, okay? And then all the other costs keep rising, just like you at home. You're choked out. What do? And then you also have labor agreements to pay for and everything else. So we're in a situation here that's, people need to realize we are living within our means at this point. We're looking to what our means look like with the sales tax and without. And I can honestly tell you the without is not pretty. So we're using every revenue possibility, whether it's covering the cost of fees within the offices that people visit. We don't like that, but we have to cover the cost. So we're upping the fees to what the labor studies tell us what they could be. So to answer your question, it's about 80%. And that doesn't leave a lot.
No, it doesn't. I mean, because when you look at it, I mean, we are talking a little over $18 million is what that is. So it's a tremendous amount of money that goes just to compensation alone. And that doesn't include our accounts payable, which are our vendors who do work for us, and that whole situation, which is it's a terrible situation to be in. Any other questions from the audience? Well, I would like to just thank everyone for coming out and being a part of this town hall meeting. This is very important to me. I think it's very important to our taxpayers to know that we have the information out there. This is streamed. It's going to be streamed and not live, but it's recorded, and so it will be available on video. Please share it with your friends who were unable to attend. Let them know that we are out here. We are letting people know what is going on. There are no secrets. We're being completely transparent, and we want people to understand the value that the elected officials bring, be it the county board, be it a countywide elected, particularly the auditor's office, because I believe for a long time our auditor's office did not bring the value that needs to be brought. The auditor has many, many duties, to include being the general accountant of the county, and we are working to make sure that that value of this office that is statutory is absolutely present in this position. So I thank you again for coming. I thank our wonderful guest, the chairman of the county board, for being a part of this discussion, and I look forward to seeing you at the next town hall. Thank you very much.